Hey guys, what's up? It is week 370, and first, before we start this, there might be an update at the end. I don't know if the mail is going to come in time. Who knows? But let's hop into these reviews. The first one up is Off Balance by Cauldron Films, aka Phantom of Death. It was an old Shameless release, if I'm not mistaken, from UK. Originally, that's where I first heard of this movie. It's directed by Ruggero Deodato. It stars Michael York, Donald Pleasence, and Edwidge Fenech. So it's got a nice little cast in there of genre favorites. Pleasence is no stranger to the Italian film cinema, or film scene, I should say. Obviously, being in Dario Argento's Phenomenon, Luigi Cozzi's, what was the one, of course, Paganini Horror, and then he's in a couple other ones. What's the ones that Vinegar Syndrome just put out? He's in one of those. But yeah, Edwidge Fenech is a staple in, Italian sex comedies, and then of course the Giallos, most of which were produced by Luciano Martino, Sergio Martino's brother, who directed a lot of those Giallos as well. And Michael York is in a slew of things, including the original 70s Island of Dr. Moreau. And people will probably recognize him from Austin Powers. But Off Balance, surprisingly, I had never seen this one. This is 88, so it's late for Ruggero Deodato, the director of Cannibal Holocaust, House on the Edge of the Park, Jungle Holocaust, Body Count, slew of other films. But so I was kind of excited to check this one out. I put it in, and it looked gorgeous. They did a spectacular job remastering this, and it shows that the movie actually had some money behind it. So it opens up with a pretty brutal murder, very gushy, very bloody, very gushy, arterial spray through a window. It's the first one a window or not, but anyways, a really gory murder, and you're like, oh, there's kind of keeping a mystery to it until we hit about the 30-minute mark, and then they kind of reveal that. There's kind of another mystery to be discovered, but essentially what happens is, I think I'm going to have to spoil the killer. It's pretty obvious. A lot of the cover art used to spoil it as well. Michael York is actually suffering from some rare disease where he's starting to age really fast. He's playing somebody in his 30s. In real life, he was 45, 46 at the time of this, so you're like, wow. He looks really good for his age, though, but still, it's kind of funny. Edwidge Fenech is a love interest, and recently his wife was the first one murdered. So, he's obviously a suspect, and Donald Pleasence is on the case, looking through it and looking through all these things. He becomes kind of hyper-focused on this, especially when Michael York starts to screw with him, starts to call him, and all the people who spot them, the witnesses, are saying he's a 40, he's 50, because his age is constantly getting older, he's constantly aging. Kind of like that guy in the Thinner movie, right, where they are all accursed. But there's four murders or five in here, and they're all pretty brutal. There's this one crazy scene that's a part in the flashback where this guy says, talks about losing his hair, and he says pretty quick it went all fast, and he just violently attacks him, and that's kind of like the surprise kill of the movie. But yeah, there's a decent amount of nudity and sex in here. Edwidge Fenech does have a sex scene. She's a little older at this point. She was probably, I'm not guessing the age, maybe in her 40s as well. She had been acting for a lot of time here. There is kind of this whole little side thing with the character Michael York finding this dog. He's a famous opera guy, piano guy. And there's this old dog, and I don't remember the story about that dog is really strange how it got on the set. I don't remember how. I think it just went to the pound and picked up this dying dog and used him in the movie, and he's this old dog is obviously supposed to reflect him being this old man. But yeah, there's a lot of police procedural stuff, but there's some really solid kills, some decent acting by Michael York, and in the commentary, Eugenio Ercolani and Troy Howarth point out some really cool things, especially the point that Donald Pleasence screams, "You F you, you bastards." He starts losing his mind, cussing. And he was like, that's not really normal for Donald Pleasence. And I was like, you know what? I actually have seen him be unhinged completely. But I've never seen him drop the F-bomb or get that vocal. But I love seeing Pleasence in these. He's always fun. Nothing Underneath is another one he's in from the Italian films. But yeah, it's a really entertaining movie. A solid, gory. And the Ruggero Deodato interview in here is, he's still creating controversy even in his death. Unfortunately, he passed away recently. But Ruggero never really bites his tongue. He always kind of had a thing for shock. If you look at his movies like House by the Cemetery and Cannibal Holocaust. So he's in here and he's talking. He starts making comments about women nowadays and his relationships with them and what he likes and doesn't like. And you're like, Ruggero's just not biting his tongue. He doesn't give a shit. And it is refreshing in one way because it's not coming from a place of trying to be an asshole. It's just that he's obviously an old, dated man. But some of the stuff he says, you're like, yeah, I can see that. Then you're just like, oh, wow, that's a little bit far. But it is interesting how he talks about this one was not a movie he wanted to make. He was a very technical director, and he'd always flex his technical muscles to kind of prove points to actors and things like that. And this was a movie he didn't want to do. I think, was it Lenzi or Martino was originally lined up to do this one. I think it was Fulci originally early on around the time of New York Ripper. So this bad boy sat on the shelf for 4, 5, 6 years before they started it. It didn't get released till '88, and New York Ripper's '82. So this thing sat for 6 years, and it does feel like the script is probably a little older. Definitely more of a violent kind of type early '80s in this, but it still does have its gore, its nudity, its sex. It's got a good solid cast in here, and it does have some extra features as well. It looks spectacular. But yeah, there's an uncommon director interview with Ruggero Deodato, one of the final interviews with the controversial director, filmed July 2022. Audio commentary with Italian film historians Eugenio Ercolani and Troy Howarth. English trailer, Italian trailer. Yeah, so, I forgot Giovanni Lamberto Radice's also in here, also passed away. He's got a nice little scene as a priest, and he's in a slew of movies. A couple for Ruggero, of course. He's in everybody's favorite House by the Cemetery, A House on the Edge of the Park, not to be confused with The House by the Cemetery. But yeah, I love this movie. I was impressed with it. I hadn't seen it, and it didn't disappoint. That is Phantom of Death, aka Off Balance. Okay, the next one up is the debut release of Celluloid Dreams, and this is a new label releasing 4Ks and Blu-rays, and they are doing a 2-disc Blu-ray/4K set here of The Case of the Bloody Iris, which is a kind of popular giallo. Blue Underground put out the DVD. It's never had a Blu-ray or 4K, so that's really exciting. This has George Hilton and Edwidge Fenech, two kind of very popular people of the Italian giallo scene, and of course Hilton was in a slew of spaghetti westerns. He's in a couple of the Sartana. I think he's in one of the Sartana movies, and just a million of the Sergio Martino, gialli, as well as Edwidge Fenech, who again was married to Sergio's brother, who produced a lot of the movies. So he produced this one as well. So yeah, The Case of the Bloody Iris. So this one I put in, and I noticed immediately similarities to All Colors of the Dark, which came out the same year, and it makes sense because Ernesto Gastaldi wrote this one. Ernesto Gastaldi was a prolific Italian writer. He wrote like all these movies, and he even directed a couple. Screams in the Night is one, and I can't think of The Impasse. Is that the one that or no? It's a Libido, which is the one they put out. Severin put out recently. He directed that as well. But yeah, so Case of the Bloody Iris follows Edwidge Fenech, who moves into these apartments. Somebody has just recently been murdered in these apartments, these kind of big apartment buildings, and it's kind of a really cool elevator scene, which the commentator basically points out. Maybe Brian De Palma saw this before he made Dress to Kill, which has a great elevator kill in there, of course, with Nancy Allen involved. But yeah, so he starts talking about all this. And you're watching it, and I'm like, he points out the cult aspect, which Edwidge Fenech is trying to escape from a cult where she was married to somebody, and this person is stalking her, so there's a big red herring there. We have all these red herrings. There's a creepy old lady who's hiding somebody in her apartment. There's an older, kind of professor guy who plays music in there. So you have all these kind of people. There is a strange woman, daughter of that guy. She's kind of like very, almost gives lesbian tones. And at one point, there's this really cool scene where this woman, they go to this show, and there's this like lady that lives in apartments, and she's challenging the men out there. Anybody that can beat me can take me. So this guy goes in, and she just whomps him in all these weird kind of spectacular ways. That's such a 70s kind of thing. Reminds me so much of 70s Italian cinema, especially when they start doing the giallo, like high class mixing with the hippie kind of crazy nightclub culture. They do that a lot in these giallis or giallos, whichever you prefer. But this one's pretty solid. A lot of the deaths are drowning, which kind of remind me of Blood and Black Lace. Of course, one of the infamous deaths in that is a drowning. There's a drowning death in here. And a burn death, kind of, which is pretty crazy. All in all, this is a pretty good mystery. I did not guess who the killer was. I don't know if you couldn't guess. I think you possibly could. But the music is good. The camera work is probably one of the best for these kind of movies. I love the point of view in the cars, how they do that. And I was watching this, and I was like, you know what? The first couple of Italian movies I watched, I probably never registered how cool the camera work is with the cars, and how how quick everything is, and it's done so professionally but so quick and on a budget. And I never registered that. I always registered that, but it's been so long since I paid attention to it because I've grown so accustomed to Italian style filmmaking and their cinematography, which I just love. But yeah, it looks gorgeous on 4K. It sounds pretty good. You can watch it in Italian or English. George Hilton's good in it. He's kind of also like a red herring kind of boyfriend type. Edwidge Fenech is solid in it. She's always great. She's just always a professional. There's other couple familiar faces in here. The Spanish actor who is like the Count's the father in Horror Express is in here. The police chief, the police guy's in here as well. All in all, it's a really nice release. I'm looking forward to what they do next, which will be Black Belly the Tarantula, which is another really solid Gialli film. Great title too. But we have original Italian opening credits, English and Italian theatrical trailers, Flowers of the Moon featurette with George Hilton, who passed away unfortunately, Mary Lynn featurette of Paolo Quattrini, Drops of Giallo featurette with Ernesto Gastaldi and Giuliano Carnimeo, commentary track by film critic Guido Henkel, which is really cool. So yeah, this is good stuff here. I would recommend checking this one out. It is HDR on here, so recommend Case of the Bloody Iris. Good stuff, good Gialli from 1972, the heyday of Italian Giallo films. Okay, this next one here is a Hong Kong flick directed by King who did Come Drink With Me, which is a really crazy, wixy, kind of fun romance, kind of action kind of deal. But yeah, this one here is the Valiant ones. This is the 4K from Eureka Films. And yeah, this is really, really impressive stuff. I love this movie here. So the Valiant ones. I've been watching a lot of Japanese and Hong Kong and cinema like that. And sometimes I like them all, but a lot of the Japanese and some of the Hong Kong stuff, they'll get convoluted in their story. They'll get very complicated. So I put in this kind of the bigger movie that I was like, oh, this is going to be kind of an epic. I'm sure that it's going to be very politically motivated, a lot of things behind the scenes. And this is just kind of an awesome kind of style and like a Seven Samurai style where it's just up front with the story. It's not exactly that, but you know, it's just kind of that. There's a group of kind of pirates that are killing everybody that's in the countryside and taking all their things. So essentially, the king or the emperor, he wants this to stop. So he hires a couple generals or this military guy, and he gets this ragtag group of people, and they're all really cool. One is a husband and wife combo, and they basically are on their mission to figure out who these pirates are and stop them at all costs. They are all badass fighters. They are all very memorable. They all kind of have their own little specialty. They build the characters up too really well. And they have a bunch of run-ins with all these people and fights and all these kind of things until eventually there's this giant battle scene. And what this movie does really well is it introduces the majority of the main villains towards the third act of the film. But I do not know how Asian films do this so well and American films cannot. Essentially, they'll introduce these characters, and within 30 seconds of screen time, every one of them, you know who they are. And maybe it's just their choice of fighting style or weapons, but this just creates these characters and makes them so much more profound than a lot of the villains you see in other different countries' films. But for some reason, the character infiltrates this gang, and it ends up being a Japanese gang of pirates, which a clan, I'll say, but it's always common for Japanese, Chinese kind of in these movies to fight, especially in a lot of the Hong Kong movies. There's always that element of the Japanese kind of invading or being villains in here and whatnot, and using secret kind of, a lot of times it'll be different kung fu techniques or karate techniques or taekwondo techniques to beat the Hong Kong, and they'll have to figure out a way to get around them to figure out master kung fu, tiger style, all these kind of things like that. That's not necessarily this. I would say that this one is more straightforward, more sword play, bow play. It's not in that training montage kind of stuff here. This is more of a war film in that aspect. But yeah, the bad guys are revealed, and they're all really interesting. Sammo Hung is in here. Gotta love Sammo Hung. It's an early role from him. But regardless, the end stuff and the fights are great. The ending is just super memorable, especially the visual, the last couple shots in here. But I love the Valiant ones. It's a great movie. It's a great action film. It's drama based, and there is some politics behind the scene, but it's mostly just a very straightforward, entertaining story about guys on a mission, which I'm totally into. As far as the special features are concerned, we have limited O-Car with slipcover featuring new artwork by Gregory Sacre, 4K Dolby Vision from digital restoration, original negatives gifted by director King Hu to the Hong Kong Film Archive, uncompressed original Mandarin mono restored from original soundtrack negative, brand new audio commentary by East Asian film expert Frank Jin, Tony Raines on the Valiant ones, brand new interview and critic Tony Raines. Then we have Tassar of the All Wixie, brand new video essay by David Carnes. The Life of Lucky Stuntman, brand new interview with stuntman Billy Chan. My Father and I, brand new interview with actor Ning Ming Choi. Memories of Who, archival 2003 interview with Roger Garcia, Hong Kong International Film Festival Society by Frederick Arbrosini. A hard word. Archival 2003 interview with actress Hus Fang by Frederick again. Archival 2016 interview with actor Ning Ming Choi. Yeah, and then we have a collector's booklet featuring new writings on the film by Jonathan Clemens. Anyways, excellent release in 4K. It looks spectacular, and I loved all the characters, and this one actually got to me. It was very touching. Good stuff, the Valiant ones. All right, next one up is just one I decided to watch randomly. Have this sitting around. Have not seen it in years. This is The Lamp from 1987, aka The Outing. This was what I originally rented it as on VHS tape. Always remember the opening here, not the boat opening, which is very similar to Dracula, where we kind of see where the lamp comes from, but the part with the three convicts kind of going to this old witch lady's house and stealing the lamp and getting killed. That's kind of a very memorable scene. Anyways, that happens. The lamp gets transferred to a museum. And the main character is kind of the one curator of the museum, and a couple another like kind of professor with him. They're trying to figure out what this lamp is, what it says on there, all the things like that. The daughter comes in and she's kind of fooling around, and she picks up this bracelet, and the bracelet is directly connected with the lamp. Therefore, you can be possessed by the lamp and all that kind of thing. She decides to sneak in some of her, friends from school and her boyfriend into the museum late at night. Hey, remember the Initiation or Chopping Mall or any of those or Elves, where people are like, we're gonna sneak in after night and stay in here. And then, of course, some shit hits the fan and they're killed and they got to survive. It's essentially what happens here. So she sneaks in there and brings her friends in, but unbeknownst to her, there is the school bully who happens, and his goon, toady, if you will, who happens to be her ex-boyfriend, the main bully here. And there is a scene in the school that this guy is a monster. In the very beginning, he rear-ends the new boyfriend, and he drives recklessly, gets stopped by the cops, and you're like, all right, that's the end of him. No, then he pops up at school, he's like assaulting women, hitting them, pulling out knives, and he's still not arrested because he comes from a rich family. But in reality, you're just like, I don't even know what's happening here. Like, if somebody rear-ends my car nowadays, like, either if I have a gun, I'm just going to shoot him at this point on purpose. Like, I'm just so over even worrying about shit. Or I'm just going to follow where he goes and pop all four of his fucking tires if I don't. With extreme prejudice. I mean, come on. It's just so insane how 80s bullies are so over the top. It's like, I would double down on those motherfuckers at this point in my life. It's just like, in general, it's just like, is this insane? I don't remember bullies being that horrible. Maybe like they saw a bully beats the shit out of somebody or dumps some crumbs in their hair or some shit. Or like trips them or something and gives them a wedgie swirly. Whatever. But there's like trying to kill him and shit. These are like Stephen King bullies. Stephen King ruined the bully for everybody. Now they're all over the top maniacal fucking maniacs with pocket knives and shit, trying to carve their initials in your stomach. But regardless, so these goons, they sneak in as well. Of course, the lamp gets awakened and it's an evil genie. A lot of the kills, involve snakes and things like that. There's a couple decent kills. The acting is all right. There's plenty of nudity, 2-3 scenes of nudity, and this kind of, I don't know, it feels almost like a slasher with a genie. I do like some of the characters, they're fine. There's a cool practical effect with the genie. At one point, there is a mummy thing that comes to life, which I enjoyed. Overall, The Outing, aka The Lamp, is pretty decent, cheap, low budget, very regional Texas horror film. It definitely lets you know they're in Texas. It's a regional film. It's like, hey, we're in Texas, and they bring it up a couple times. It's not over the top, but it does have a regional charm, which I do enjoy. And basically the special features are new 2K scan from 35 interpositive, all the family taking an outing in The Lamp, an extended making of documentary with writer-producer Warren Chaney, executive producer Fred T. Cunard, along with the actors Deborah Winters, Andrea St. Ivany, Andre Chimeni, Hank Amigo, Michelle Watkins, and Barry Coffin. Commentary track with writer-producer Warren Chaney, along with actors Deborah Winters and Barry Coffin. Yeah, the little making of is like 36 minutes long. It's pretty interesting, and they all sound like a really good group of filmmakers or friends and good people in general, the producers and all that kind of stuff. And the idea of coming up with an evil genie was good. It would be later used in Wishmaster from 1997, which I'm a fan of course. But yeah, this one was a little bit before. There's also Toby Hooper's Jinn that comes later down the line, and what would you call Sorority Babes in a Slime Bowl Rana. He's an imp, but he grants wishes. And Leprechaun. I'm just thinking of magic kind of creatures and horror. But The Lamp, aka The Outing, check it out if it's up your alley. It's a pretty fun, decent horror movie. It's a good time waster. All right, let's hop into those 1982 movies.
I'm human. If you were all these things, then you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to. But it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
Son of a bitch, you moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You son of a bitch, you left the bodies and you only moved the headstones! You only moved the headstones! Why? Why?
For a girl like you to come into my life, I've been waiting for a girl like you who love and will survive. I've been waiting for someone new to make me feel alive. Yeah, waiting for a girl like you to come into my life.
You bitch! You called me a bitch!
What's in the basket?
Open season!
How do we know she is alive?
Say, please stop it. There's no more time. You've got to. Please stop it. Stop it now. Turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop
Okay, first up is The Sender, and it's been a very long time since I've watched this, and rewatching it, I was kind of reminded of, the movie from 87, Retribution, although this is from 82, kind of these hospital kind of horrors, or The Ugly from 1997, the New Zealand film. But The Sender, yeah, I remember when I watched this, I remember liking it, I remember it being a little dull, but at the end of the day, I remember it being kind of artsy, well-made. The lead in here, I only know him from the TV show Oz, where he played Governor Devlin. Devlin, oh, Devil? Okay, so yeah. But in the very beginning of the film, he is a very suicidal man. He walks into a public park, puts rocks in his clothes, and jumps in the water. He is saved. He wakes up in a hospital, and we have a very caring kind of doctor looking after him, trying to figure it out. Paul Freeman is also her superior doctor, or superior, but I mean like her basically her person in charge. Paul Freeman's in stuff like Indiana Jones and Ivan Ooze in Power Rangers, and he was in the movie where they're stranded on the island. Good actor, very good actor. He's good in this. He's solid in this. Also probably the second most recognizable actor. So what happens is almost immediately weird shit starts going on, and you kind of learn that he might have some powers. The guy's mom comes in and warns her that, a la Carrie. She's very Carrie-esque, Mama Carrie, kind of warning her, you should let him go, let him come back to his mom. All these things start to kind of go, and there's a guy in there, there's some crazy kind of types in the asylum. One who believes Vietnam's still going on, another guy who thinks he's a messiah, who's a bully. And yeah, there's this really crazy scene where they decide to give this character electric shock therapy, and that's when everything goes completely wild and insane. That's a really cool scene. Overall, The Sender is a well-made, kind of well-thought-out, kind of horror, sci-fi kind of deal. There's little things that are leaking into the real world, which puts this kind of ahead of its time. You know, you think the reality's being like kind of this guy's thoughts are kind of coming into reality. You're thinking stuff like Nightmare on Elm Street with the dream kind of logic, or The Slayer, where somebody can really bring something from their nightmares out alive. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. It's a very cool concept. The possibilities are really endless. This one is taken very seriously for, you know, that kind of crazy over-the-top concept. But I don't, you know, if it's the idea that someone could do that is terrifying to think. And at the end of the film, we kind of see where he originally came from, and we kind of get the pieces to the puzzle, the missing pieces, and we realize, you know, those visions all were because of something. But yeah, The Sender is pretty solid. I would recommend it. Check it out. Next up is Murder by Phone, and this actually has a couple familiar faces in here, Richard Chamberlain and John Houseman, which is crazy because in 1980 John Houseman did The Fog, and then he went on to do Ghost Story in 1981, and now he's doing Murder by Phone in 1982. So I have a feeling John Houseman didn't do too many horror movies before the 80s, but it seems like he's getting his whole kind of horror movie career in right away. But I mean in the 80s, which makes sense. You know, a lot of these actors do that. But what we have here is we have this professor who, a random student in the subway, she picks up a phone, it explodes, and she dies. It melts, it kills her. It's very strange what happens. This professor wants to look into it. They're saying she died of a heart attack. He really doesn't believe it. He starts to dig deeper. He used to be kind of this big political, you know, kind of guy that picketed and did all sorts of things like that. Whatever for like, I don't want to say hippie, but, you know, he was one of these guys that fought for a lot of rights. And John Houseman was an older guy that did the same, and he's kind of a colleague, a kind of a friend for him. So what happens is he starts to get involved with John Houseman. He starts to kind of dig deeper underneath the surface. There's also a journalist or somebody that's also involved with the company that gets involved, and he starts to dig under the surface, and there's a couple people that have been killed the same similar way, and there's a police officer that's involved, and he's badgering the cop and everything, and there's a really intense performance between him and the cop. But eventually what happens is he starts to uncover, obviously, some sort of, you know, conspiracy. And they're using the phones as weapons. And the actual kills that the phones do are awesome. They're big, they're explosive, they're crazy. And the killer is kind of a reveal of somebody that maybe feels like they've been mistreated. All in all, Murder by Phone is pretty decent. The phone kills are great. I would really recommend those. And yeah, the acting is solid too. It's made by I can't think of the director, but it's made, you would think this is a TV movie. It is not. It's done pretty well in terms of technical aspects and acting and all that kind of stuff like that. But that's Murder by Phone. Check it out. Next up is Hotline, and I'm almost positive that this is a TV movie. This stars Linda Carter, of course, Wonder Woman. It also has a couple other familiar faces in here. But she works as a bartender. Then one day we have this doctor kind of come in last minute, and he's like, "Hey, can I have a cup of coffee?" There's a guy kind of bothering her, and she ends up kind of solving the problem, getting the guy to go. And this guy's so impressed. He's like, "You should come work for my kind of suicide hotline," and whatnot. So she kind of is interested. She likes the doctor. She ends up going there and starts to work there. She starts getting strange phone calls. You know, pretty much like Don't Answer the Phone. Any of those kind of movies where you're running this hotline and somebody strange starts calling. All those kind of things start to happen right away. But she's friends with the guy who runs the bar still, and she works there part-time. And this guy used to be a stuntman for this big kind of actor who always frequents the bar. That guy, I can't think of his acting name, but he pops up in Mommy Dearest as, you know, Mommy Dearest's boyfriend. And he's got my favorite line in the movie: "Good night, good luck, and goodbye." And that's just such a best moment there. He's really good in this. Pretty soon they start to give clues. The person calling in, and there's somebody murdered, and they start to leave these kind of clues like London this time, and she starts putting it together, looking at news articles from that time, and realizes this guy's probably a serial killer, and starts to dig deeper, and all signs point to somebody that she knows. Overall, this is a really good thriller / horror kind of TV movie, if it is TV, but I was impressed with the acting. I was impressed with how it unfolded, and at the end, you're like, it's kind of going to be this person or this person, and you don't think they're going to be super obvious, but you never know. Hotline, I was pretty impressed with, honestly, for what it was. Good stuff, and I liked it probably a little bit better than Murder by Phone, even though Murder by Phone is the bigger, probably the technically better made movie, but I enjoyed both. Two horror kind of, you know, phone movies this year. All right, next up is another TV movie called Don't Go to Sleep. Now, this is a very popular TV film. I had heard about it before. The lead guy in here is the guy from Duel, which a lot of people have seen, and it's got Ruth Gordon in here from, of course, Harold and Maude. So TV films were still going on, obviously, in '82. One of the big ones the year before Don't, was the Scarecrow, Dark Knight of the Scarecrow, which I love. But this one started off, and it had, the TV score, and I was like, all right, this is popular, so let's see what's going on. And it's a very stressful time for this couple. They have 2 kids. They recently lost a daughter in a tragedy, and their mother, and this guy's mother-in-law, his wife's mom, is going to move in with them. He's obviously not very happy about this. It's Ruth Gordon. They move in. She's got a cantankerous attitude. She's arguing with the kids. Actually, one of the kids is the kid from Poltergeist, made the same year, which is kind of bonkers to me, and Poltergeist 2 as well. But they move into this house, and the first night, the bed catches fire. The daughter's bed catches fire. It's really crazy. And pretty soon, before long, things get crazier and crazier, and the daughter who's passed away starts to communicate with the little girl here, and she starts to manipulate her. So what we have here is a ghost story and a revenge story and a evil little kid story as well. There is a psychiatrist or psychiatric doctor, I can't remember which one, and Robert Webber from stuff like The Dirty Dozen and 12 Angry Men. He comes in here, good performance by him, trying to help the daughter. But before long, people start getting picked off, and there's a couple of scenes where people die. I'm like, they're dead? They're gone? Because you think TV movie, you're not going to see that kind of crazy shit like you saw in Dark Knight of the Scarecrow. But this one I think is even darker. And the arguments that the husband and wife have were like high class, like a lot of the movies that come out nowadays with the big hardcore family dramas. They say elevated horror. These arguments in here were just like that. They were just as satisfying, if not better. I think it's Weaver. I don't know if it's Dennis Weaver who plays the father. And there's bits about him. There's parts that don't remind me of my father, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot in here that reminds me of my dad. When he's sitting in the bathtub talking about the pepperoni, 100% very realistic performance. Just kind of mouthing off, talking to himself, being a little silly. He's really good in this. In fact, the father and wife are the father and mother are excellent in here. Their arguments, their intensity, and when they go off on each other is just so good. And there's a scene where they're screaming at each other that just made this elevated horror. It elevated this movie to being something much better than it has any right to be. The end is dark. The movie in overall is a pretty dark movie. But don't go to sleep. I would recommend. It's a good TV movie. I would love to see a nice release of it. But yeah, great stuff from 1982. Okay, the next one here is I'm gonna be mistaken here. I think it's a Mexican film, South American film, and it is Pure Blood. And I had not really heard much about this. I had saw the cover art with the old man leaning over and kind of sucking the blood of the young person. That's kind of an allegory here, right? We have the rich still feeding off the poor, literally, in this movie. Very obvious, but it's very effective, and it's very fucking true a lot of the times. So essentially what we have here is a very sick old man who's rich. He owns cane fields, all these kind of things here. His son is running the business while he's in the hospital, and this guy needs blood from young men or children. What happens is it's very expensive, and the son, who's doing some kind of really shady dealings under his father's nose that he doesn't know about, decides to blackmail a trio of people that work for the father directly, getting blood and helping medical and stuff like that. I don't know all 3 of them do, but there's one who's a nurse. So they have a crime, and they're just very weird people. And he spots something on them. He starts to blackmail them. And, we kind of have a Burke and Hare kind of Frankenstein-style story. Instead of, procuring this blood legally, they're going to do any means necessary. And that means, going about the streets and kidnapping young children or picking up homosexuals in bars and getting them fucked up and taking their blood and killing them. All sorts of things like that until it just starts this crazy kind of serial killer stuff on TV. And it's pretty graphic. In the very opening, there is a bunch of naked dead men in a room, and it's kind of going over, panning and everything like that. But the idea that these 3 people are literally just kidnapping people and draining them blood, feeding it to an old man, and he could survive, you're just like, wow, that is so crazy here. But I thought this was great. I thought this was really well done. I thought that the news footage looked very real and felt very genuine, and the ending is good too. It's a dark ass movie. There is a scene where they pick up these 2 guys and they're giving them drugs and feeding them. That scene goes on really long. It makes it really uncomfortable, and it feels really real. And I thought that stuff was, impressive. I thought Pure Blood was kind of a hidden gem. I thought the acting was solid. I thought the characters were creepy, slimy kind of people. But this is good stuff. It's called Pure Blood. It kind of shows them with their families at times and interacting with like their mother and shit. And you're just like, their normal side, as normal as they can be. But Pure Blood I thought was really good, really strong stuff. And the old man is always watching kind of like classic movies while he's sitting there dying, and you're just like, why are you gripping onto life? I mean, he doesn't necessarily know where this blood's coming from, but he has to know that somebody's giving up their blood, or he's using medical supplies at the very least. Why are you holding on to your life? Because you can, because you can afford it. But then again, what kind of life are you living? It's just kind of crazy, and that's never gonna get old. It's always gonna reflect the time, people feeding off people and whatnot. But that's Pure Blood, good stuff. Okay, now the Patreon pick, and this was picked, I can't remember who picked it, but they picked a doozy. This is a movie that I only saw on television, and I'm pretty sure I saw the whole thing a couple times. Just never watched the whole thing in one sitting. It's always been on TV, always watching it. And that's horrible to say, but this is Mel Brooks' Blazing Saddles, 1974, 76, 74, I think. But so this is a great movie. It stars, of course, Gene Wilder, Mel Brooks, Cleavon Little, Slim Pickens. Gotta love Slim Pickens. But yeah, this is so good in this. This is obviously a Western parody here. The humor is going to be outdated for some people, but Mel Brooks, I don't ever think had a hateful bone in his body. Still alive, still made a lot of great movies. Of course, Robin Hood Men in Tights, Young Frankenstein, Spaceballs, High Anxiety, the producers. Mel Brooks is a comedy legend. Dracula Dead and Loving It. But yeah, so this one is probably one of his most well-regarded films. And this follows, there's a lot of racist comments in here, but the bad guys are the racist and stuff like that, the small town stupidity, and they're called idiots throughout the entire film. I don't know if that makes it right to some people or tolerable, but regardless, it's a product of its time. I'm just going to get this over with now. A lot of the humor, will work for you if you've seen Westerns, and it's probably like, well, in reality, these people will be horrible pieces of shit. And it kind of plays into that as well. Mel Brooks as the Native American is also pretty funny, considering the fact that always Italians played the Native Americans, and he's playing it, doing Yiddish accent and all that kind of stuff in here. You'll notice a lot of recycled jokes that he would use later in Spaceballs, going to watch the movie in the theater instead of the VHS tape rewinding. He does that in here. He does a lot of things that are, very much Spaceballs later on. He'll do those kind of jokes, those kind of Mel Brooks style humor. But this movie is not afraid to break the fourth wall, and it does pay off in the very end when it literally breaks the fucking wall down of the movie set, and they end up on a different movie set, and they end up on the streets and in a movie theater. Very funny cameo by Dom DeLuise in here. But Slim Pickens is my favorite part of the movie. He plays the main goon. It's perfect that he voices the Sheriff of Nottingham in the Robin Hood animated movie. Slim Pickens would pop up in stuff like The Howling for Joe Dante and another TV horror movie, No Place to Hide, or This House Possessed, I think he's in. So, Slim Pickens was in a couple horror films, but mostly he's known for his Western output. And, of course, Dr. Strangelove Rides the Bomb Down, iconic scene there. And his Sam Peckinpah Westerns, the Ballad of Cable Hogue, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. He's in a handful of them, Major Dundee. So the thing is, I think Slim Pickens is perfectly cast in this movie, because although he's kind of plays like a lovable kind of guy a lot of the times, and this one, he's a villain. And there is the funniest line in there. Has anybody got a dime? Oh, we're going to have to go back and get a shitload of dimes. I almost cried rewatching that scene. Gene Wilder is charming as hell. He always is, from Willy Wonka to the Richard Pryor films he's in. But, this movie is going to be dated for a lot of people, but I still think it's funny as hell. I still think it's clever as hell. I still think it parodies the Western perfectly. I think that there's just lots of cuteness and fun, and the language is obviously dated. The sexual politics, all that stuff is going to be incredibly dated, as you would watch a Western, and it would be dated. But, I think Blazing Saddles is still kind of a masterpiece. I still think it's absolutely hilarious. Corman in here, basically perfect as a villain. He does the little froggy scene, which they redo in Spaceballs as well with Rick Moranis. No, I didn't see you playing with your toys. But anyways, Blazing Saddles, hopefully I talked about it enough. It's pretty brilliant. It would be a good movie to bounce back and forth with people, but I absolutely loved it. So, yeah, great stuff. If you guys have not noticed, I am extremely exhausted today. I do not know why. But here we go with the questions, comments, concerns, all that jazz. Bad Brains Horror. Dave, When are you and Jeremy making Slimy Little Bastards 2? Great video. Thank you. Never! Never going to make another movie ever, probably again, to be honest. Probably won't even act in any. Maybe a small bit here and there, but no plans to. Ken Coakley. Young Guns is one of many films I've seen about Billy the Kid. The Left Hand Gun starring Paul Newman, Dirty Little Billy starring Michael J. Pollard, The Outlaw starring Jane Russell, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid starring Chris Christopherson and James Coburn. Huge fan of Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, by the way. The list is endless. Young Guns was an attempt to make an MTV version of a Western. I'm glad that pop music subsided early on in the film. The main cast were Brat Packers, but some of the other actors were veteran actors such as Brian Keith, who was Buckshot Roberts. He did The Mountain Men with Charlton Heston, as well as Hooper with Burt Reynolds. My dad, one of his favorite movies was The Mountain Men. Love Brian Keith. Victor Isay, who played Justice Wilson, was in the Billy Jack films. The guy that bragged about getting ready to kill Billy the Kid threw me off as I could have sworn it was Sam Neill. He looked just like him and his voice was the exact match. The actor was Thomas Calloway. Tom Cruise had a cameo as one of Murphy's thugs, and singer Randy Travis played the cavalry soldier shooting a Gatling gun. The peyote scene was hilarious. It was almost as funny as Charlie Sheen's fake accent. Tom Cruise actually gets shot in there. He's got the mutton chop sideburns. I like Young Guns 2 a little bit more because I like Christian Slater and Alan Ruck as the new additions, as well as William Peterson as Patrick Wayne's replacement as Pat Garrett. I'll give you the one. My two favorite characters do not make it to the sequel, but William Peterson's so much better as Pat Garrett in the sequel. I also like the song Blaze of Glory because it sounded like it belonged in a Western. I usually don't like Bon Jovi's music, but this is the only song I like by them. My favorite film about Tunstall, Sullivan, and Billy the Kid was 1970 John Wayne film Chisholm. Forrest Tucker played Murphy, Patrick Knowles played Tunstall, and Jeffrey Dooley played Billy the Kid. Wayne played John Chisholm, a rancher who teams up with Tunstall to fight Murphy. The cast was a who's who of horror exploitation actors: Christopher George, Linda Day George, Andrew Prine, Richard Jekyll, Ben Johnson. Love all those guys. I can't help but think of part 2 when he says Alan Ruck, and he's like, "Took a lot of farms, Mr. Chisholm," when I say that name. There was also the song in the movie by Merle Haggard. It's one of my favorite John Wayne movies. I'll have to check out Chisholm. I don't think I saw Chisholm. Fat Pig the Conqueror. Holy crap, the J-Man makes his return. That he does. Nick Moore from Belgium. The Haunting of Julia seems frightfully enchanting, and for you to recommend a ghost story, that really means something. Also, don't you just love it when Mia Farrow does horror? I mean, that and Rosemary's Baby are the ones I can think of. I just heard that Danny Boyle is making 28 Years Later starring Cillian Murphy. Is it Killian? I think it's Cillian Murphy. I actually excited about this one, even though I'm not hugely in the zombie-infected subgenre. I'm curious. I assumed all Americans knew what TTFN means. It's from Winnie the Pooh and stands for Tada for now. Little Dave wasn't a Pooh Bear and Tigger fan, I take it. I mean, I watched it, but I don't remember that, to be honest. Questions. What's more creepy, Psycho Biddies or Evil Little Girls? I whoop both their asses. Bring it. Bring it. No, old people creep me out, man. I fucking hate old people. Which home media company delivers the quickest? I found that 88 Films delivers lightning fast, even when it concerns their pre-releases. I'm waiting for the Pete Walker 7 movie box set. I mean, Vinegar Syndrome's usually pretty quick. I know that I was complaining about that earlier, but I got that problem taken care of, and they were right on it. So, Vinegar Syndrome's pretty quick. Amazon's fast. I know it's on a niche label. I'm trying to think. 88 Films. There's a lot of them that are good, but I would say that Vinegar Syndrome, because I have the yearly sub. Sophie Bongos. I just sort of shut my brain off while watching Unhinged and enjoyed it somewhat. Wasn't expecting the reveal, and that has made the movie stay within my memory fairly well. Shame the elements are lost. The reveal is before Sleepaway Camp, but then again, it's way after Psycho. Steed and Hyde, another great review. Subject Perspective Collective. The Haunting of Julia, first saw when Scream Factory put out recently, is blown away. Genuinely creepy-ass ghost film that leaves the brain wheels turning. And Poltergeist, I feel, was way more effective back in the days when everyone's TV in the U.S. played the national anthem late at night to sign off cue for all the stations and went to static. Still a great film, but we all have been desensitized. Great stuff as always, brother. Thank you. Kentuckinator, nice to see Jeremy back too, of course. I'm glad he did a little video. And he also continues, 2723, yawning during Unhinged review, an appropriate response. I own this on DVD because I won one of your early contests. It's fine, it has a decent killer reveal. Way up, dude, thank you for giving the thumbs up. And Ilk Vomit, reap it, Murphy, you son of a bitch. We're in the spirit world, asshole. They can't see us. I'm not a pistolier or knife smith like that greaser Chavez over there. I'm a pugilist. But you forgot the best part. but I don't expect you to know the meaning of that word, hog boy. I probably shouldn't have said. You made me say something I shouldn't have said in there. But Young Guns, man, one of the best movies ever, endlessly quotable, and top favorite of mine forever. Jason Bovey, really enjoyed your review of The Haunting of Julie. I agree that the soundtrack adds so much atmosphere to the film, especially the memorable ending. Travis Linscomb, hey Dave, like you've been a VHS subscriber for years, and I don't recall ever having my order split up like that. Have a good week, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. So I think, you know what, the update didn't, I mean, there's stuff coming in the mail today. I might go back and film it at the end. I don't know. But just for now, yeah, I know you're like, Dave, why are you buying bootlegs of movies that you have? But this is the mall cut, the Monroeville mall cut. It's not the typical all the footage added together, which has been called the Red Edition at times. This is actually a new mall cut with all the footage added in and a new opening that was shot and used AI voice and stuff like that. You know, I wanted to check it out because I'm such a big Dawn fan, and I wanted a hard copy of all the cuts put together. I'm definitely going to check this out and see how it plays. Very excited, you know. This guy does a bunch of these. He upscales a lot of stuff from AI, which is kind of crazy to me that we live in that world. But yeah, this is pretty wild. This is the Dawn of the Dead Monroeville cut. I'll let you guys know what it's like when I watch it eventually. But yeah, we're out of here. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.